cleaning the trash cans.
Oh, boy.
So you think you can help?
I can try. Hey, what you doing?
Ah, just cleaning my trash cans.
Wow. See, you put your address and phone number on here.
Well, you can never be too safe.
With trash?
Hi, Dr. Rick. It's Julie. Just leaving you a voicemail. My number is 618-437-7425.
Okay.
It's for
Can anyone tell me what Julie did wrong there?
You gotta repeat the number. I mean, no one's ever gonna get it the first time.
Nope.
Didn't leave her last name.
No, the phone tells you who called.
Yeah, she didn't mention a good time to call her back. How am I supposed to know when to call her back?
No, she just shouldn't have left a voicemail. 9 out of 10 times a text will do.
Hey, what's the lowest you'll go on one of these mugs?
Well, remember, no haggling in stores.
Ah, yeah, chapter 6, yeah.
I was hoping to get your John Hancock on there.
Let's just call it a signature.
I noticed there weren't any refreshments, so I'm just gonna leave a couple of snackies.
Folks, the line's a shambles. Let's tuck it in.
Sir?
Come on. Come on.
Okay.
Oh.
We're at the movies and we need to silence our phone. Who knows where that button is?
I don't have silent.
Everyone does, right up here.
Was that an adjustable spanner? Good choice, Steve.
Okay, don't forget, you're not assisting him. You hired him. You have nowhere to sit. You have too many. Who else reads books about submarines?
My dad's.
Okay, everybody, let's do a ticket check. Paper tickets. We're off to a horrible start. We're not going to point out our houses, landmarks, or major highways during takeoff.
Don't buy anything. I packed so many delicious snacks. They're...
Nope.
Did you say ballpark when group 2 is gonna get boarded?
2 hours and 58.
Okay, how do we avoid this? Remember? Thumbs. Okay, we're not going to ask for discounts on floor models, demos, or displays.
You ever think about the storage operation a place like this must rely on?
No.
They just sell candles and they're making overhead. You know what kind of fish those are?
No.
Don't be coy. Koi fish.
Do we really need a sign to live, laugh, and love?
Yes.
The answer is no.
Kiana.
Nope.
Koe Noah.
No.
Joaquin.
No. Give it a shot. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Snacks and popcorn are going to be expensive. Let's just accept that.
Bathrooms. Even if you don't have to go, you should try.
We all know where the bathroom is and how to use it. Okay?
You know, the Stevensons told me they save money bundling their boat insurance with Progressive.
No one knows who those people are.
Into your coats, there's an extra seat in here.
No. We don't need a coat wrangler. Okay, this is a freezer, not a time capsule.
Not those two.
Yep, they're gone.
Forever?
Yep.
That there is Progressive's Home Quote Explorer website, where I compared home insurance rates.
We don't need to print the internet. I will give you $100 if you can tell me what this is.
Scotch egg.
It's a meatball.
Progressive can't help you from becoming your parents, but we can help you compare rates on home insurance with Home Quote Explorer.
We've got a lot of...
There are commercials that make us laugh because they're so absurd and impossible. But then there are commercials that they make us laugh because they're so spot on, right? It's exactly who we are. And I'm not the biggest fan of the commercial for Progressive. That's one of the commercials that I actually typically try to avoid watching, but they're pretty accurate. As I was actually watching some of these commercials, I'm like, I've actually done some of the stuff like sneaking in snacks to the movie theater. My son works there, so it's cool. But, you know, it's one of those things where you end up doing things that you thought that you would never do because your parents did it. I would venture to say that most of us in the room have either found ourselves saying or are currently saying, if you're younger, that there are things that our parents do or that they did that we would never or will never do, right? We all have those moments where we say, well, my parents did this. I am never going to do that because I am better than that. And I'm sure that if we went around the room, there would definitely be no shortage of examples of things that we are vowing currently or have vowed, once again, we're never going to do. Some things may be traits that get under our skin, right? Our parents do certain things that ultimately they irritate us a little bit. And sometimes it's things that we experience or didn't experience that we say we are going to do because we wish we could have had those experiences. Growing up in a family of 4, I have one younger brother and 2 older sisters. And having 2 older sisters, I didn't learn how to fix a car. I learned how to shop because I had 2 older sisters. So that's really what my hobby became as I got older. And the other thing is growing up in a big city where I had friends that I surrounded myself with friends that had a taste for the nicer things in life. It was a recipe for disaster. You have sisters that like shopping. You have friends that like the finer things in life. So these are 2 other formative relationships that we have that we're going to be talking about in the weeks ahead, which is siblings and friends. But it was a recipe for disaster. I like shopping, and I didn't like shopping at Walmart. I like shopping like at Dillard's, if anybody knows what that is. But, you know, that's where I like shopping. Now, my dad was a construction worker. My mom worked for Levi Strauss, the jean company. And this is no offense if anybody likes Levi Strauss, by no means, but let me just say that growing up in Texas, within my circle of friends, Levi's was not the cool brand that was going to land you in the cool circle. And my mom working there, she would actually bring the catalog for Levi's and say, you can pick whatever you want. I'm like, bring me like the Tommy Hilfiger one, you know? So when we would go shopping, I would often ask my mom for clothes that were name brand, but they were also significantly expensive. When my dad would be in the room and I would be asking my mom for some of these things, either when she was going to go shopping or when we were looking towards Christmas, I would be making these reasonable requests for clothes, and my dad would often kind of chime in sarcastically. Sarcastically is a really nice way of saying that my dad was being mean, but my dad would say, well, why don't we just go get you a shirt, like a blank shirt, and I would just imprint the little flag logo on it, then that way you could have your Tommy Hilfiger. And I remember that's one thing that my dad said, and I remember making this statement when I was younger, and that is that once I had kids, one of the things that I would do is I would buy them name brand clothes whenever they wanted. 6 kids later, I've come to understand that Fruit of the Loom and George is actually a name brand at Walmart, you know? So realistically, it is a name brand. But in all honesty, here's the thing. I am extremely glad that we have had seasons in life where we've been able to buy our kids nice things that ultimately are fashionable and nice. But if I'm being honest, I wish that we could have the ability to do that more often, as we know that sometimes that's not the case. You know, hand-me-downs are not necessarily always the greatest thing, but we've had seasons where it's been good. We've had seasons that it hasn't. And once again, I wish that we've had the ability to do some of what I said when I was younger, but that has not been the case. And I love that our kids have not, at least not to my knowledge, held that against us. And there are many things that we say when we're younger that our parents did or didn't do that we, once again, find ourselves saying, hey, I would never do that. And let me just state in regards to that story that I shared, it's not to my parents' shame, because they did the best that they could in not only providing for us, but once again, even being able to get us some nice things along the way. And then there are things that we, once again, we wish we could do differently, and because we wanted those things. But then there are certain things that we wish we could do differently because they affected us to a certain degree that we wish we could change the trajectory for our kids. In your worship programs, you will find a section that says, "Did you know?" And under that section, it says that a common thing parents often do that they swore they would never repeat from their own childhood is yelling or using harsh language when disciplining their children, even though they may have experienced that from their own parents and said they would parent differently. I would venture to say that most of us, to some extent, have made some critical decision in our childhood that we said we're not going to do the same things that our parents did when disciplining. Now, they may not have used vulgar language. Maybe they didn't diminish, you as an individual. But once again, most of us more than likely did that. As a matter of fact, I remember a while back talking to Andrian, who was in the room, but within the Hispanic family, it's almost like they pick one character trait, and that's what they call you. So if you're a little bit overweight, guess what your nickname's going to be? Fatso for the rest of your life, right? Like for me, I was the darkest one out of my batch of siblings, and I was the darkest one, so I was called Black, right? I mean, it's like you have nicknames, and it's like you don't realize how much they damage you because they're picking a character trait that ultimately is diminishing your identity. But once again, sometimes we have, and once again, that's a cultural thing. So this is not to the shame of my parents. It's a cultural thing that we're experiencing. But one of the things that happens is there's those examples where at times we're disciplined, punished, we experience certain things that we say, we're never going to do that to our kids. The interesting is we end up using the same methods of training and punishment for the next generation. We still do it. We almost pattern exactly after our parents. It's not exactly the same, but once again, a pretty close replica. I have heard of one individual, for sure, that because of their discipline, the way that he was disciplined when they were younger, he actually swore that he would never discipline or spank their kids when they grew older. And to be honest, they followed through with it. With that in mind, here's the thing. I want to interject something, even though the topic is not discipline and nothing really in particular, but something that I want to talk about really quick is that a lack of, or absence, right, whether it's a lack or an absence of discipline, that's not the answer either. Here's something that is unbiased, it's biblical wisdom, and it says this in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24. Those who spare the rod of discipline hate their children. Those who love their children care enough to discipline them. So one of the things that, once again, we can grow up in a scenario where we have been physically abused, and that's not right. But sparing your child from discipline is also not the answer. The problem with discipline that most, if not all of us, have experienced is that it is often derived out of frustration and anger from our parents, not out of love and correction. It's when you hear your parents say, you know, I've just about had enough. You know that they already had enough. It's too late. But you hear them say that, and you know that it's out of frustration and anger. That's really where it's coming from. The discipline that you're going to experience is no longer that you want to correct the behavior. Now it's just, I just want to vent every frustration that I have boiling inside of me. So once again, simply refusing to do something based on our broken experience from our parents or fear of becoming our parents, that's also not the way to go. That's not the right answer. While we may have moments that have wrecked us in our past, I would venture to say almost with certainty that among the wreckage, we will likely find moments that have also shaped us for the better, right? If you were to look back to those moments, yeah, for sure, there's moments that broke us, but there's also probably moments that made us into the men and the women that we are today. But I want to clarify that this doesn't diminish the problem. It doesn't make it go away just because there was some good found among the wreckage. The fact of the matter is that at times we fail to see how our broken traits will ultimately be impressed onto our children. We just don't see that. We don't think about that. I have said this often, and I'll say it again, but something that the church rightfully focuses on, right? It's a good thing, but it's that there are spiritual individuals in the Bible that are exemplary. Unfortunately, what happens when we talk about that is we overlook something that is equally as important, and that is that these men of exemplary faith, men and women of exemplary faith, they also exhibit dysfunctional traits in their lives and in their families. We just talk about the good things, right? We see these men or these women as people that we can never achieve the state of their spirituality. For example, a very important figure in the Christian faith is a man by the name of Abraham. He was named Abram, and then God renames him Abraham. Not only is he one of the patriarchs of the nation of Israel, but in Hebrews chapter 11, which is the chapter of the heroes of the faith, he is mentioned to be a man that has exemplary faith. You know what that means? That means that his life, the faith that he had, is something that we should pattern after because it's that great. I don't want to diminish the faith that he exemplified, but I want to point something out. Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 through 13 state that during a time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abraham to go down to Egypt where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarah, "Look, you are a very beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. So please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you.'" Sometimes we use our sisters as pawn to make friends, right? I mean, let's just be honest, guys. We're like, oh, you know, she's pretty good looking. Let's try to see how many friends we can acquire because of that. They're going to be interested in her, but they're going to have to come to me. And as much as we could see this just as a event that is easy to overlook, you know what this would be categorized as? Biblically, it's a lie. Abraham's a liar. Abraham does make the argument later that Sarah, is really his sister, as they both have the same father but different mothers. It's a stepsister, and that is the truth. One of the things that we would consider within the church is, well, it's a half-truth. But the Bible still considers it a full lie, right? Because you're withholding information so that it could appear a certain way. The Bible records these embarrassing instances like this one for Abraham, that at times maybe you could make the argument and say, well, it's a one-time event, right? Maybe it just happened once, it never happened again. That's not the case with Abraham. In Genesis chapter 20, verses 1 and 2, it records that Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur. And when he moved on to Gerar, While living there as a foreigner, Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. Are you seeing a pattern? Abraham's a liar. He's doing this to save his own skin. And in the story, you see that, once again, that's where he says, hey, I didn't really lie. She is my sister on my dad's side. We have different moms. I didn't really lie. But the king says, hey, I could have done something that is evil in the sight of God because of what you withheld from me. Lies are destructive. Is his lying exemplary? No, his faith is. And the reason that I point this out is because often we look to the Bible and we see these men and women of exemplary faith, the heroes of the faith, and we say there's no way that we can ultimately measure up to that. The faith is exemplary. Their lives are still broken because they're still 100% human beings. At times, we have character flaws. I shouldn't say at times, we have character flaws. And we disregard them because at times we feel like they're not hurting anyone, right? Hey, it's a small little lie. It's not going to hurt anyone. We think that it's not really impacting anyone else besides maybe the person that we told the half-truth to. But here's the thing, it couldn't be further from the truth. A few months back, during our Series X, we focused on the story of Abraham and Sarah, who ended up having a son by the name of Isaac. And then if you continue to go down the chapters, you see that Isaac ends up getting married to his wife, Rebekah. And Isaac is also referenced in Hebrews chapter 11. He also displays an exemplary faith, something that you should pattern after. Now, as you fast forward from Abraham's fail regarding his half-sister, Genesis chapter 26, verses 2 through 8 gives us a detail that shows that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This is what it says. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt, but do as I tell you. Live here as a foreigner in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. I hereby confirm that I will give all these lands to you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised Abraham your father. I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars of the sky, and I will give them all these lands. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed." There's that promise, right? It continues down the line of Abraham into Isaac. "I will do this because Abraham listened to me," that's his dad, "and obeyed all the requirements, commands, and decrees and instructions." So Isaac stayed in Gerar. Here's the interesting part. When the men who lived there asked Isaac about his wife, Rebekah, what does he say? He said, "She's my sister." He was afraid to say, "She's my wife." He thought they will kill me to get her because she is so beautiful. But sometime later, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out his window and saw Isaac caressing Rebekah. That'd be weird if it was his sister. So one of the things that we're seeing is, hey, there's a pattern here. There's something that's happening that happened with his dad, and now we're seeing it in his son. Some of the most important figures, all of the most important figures in the Bible are broken. And here's the thing. Some of the most important figures in our lives that shape and mold us into the men and women that we will become are our parents. One of the things that we're seeing is Isaac's parent, Abraham, is doing something that ultimately is going to continue to go down the line. And it's interesting how it's almost to the T. They're doing the exact same thing. And I am convinced that the Bible records this not because it's normalizing the dysfunction in families, but it's helping us to see that we're all broken and there needs to be an issue that needs to be addressed. And only Jesus can address that. Now, we're going to continue to see how people are broken from the book of Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation, right? In Genesis, we're getting very precise individuals. In Revelation, we see that humanity as a whole is falling apart to the point that they are trusting in the beast. They are giving in to the beast. Now, interestingly enough, one of the things that happens, once again, we went from Abraham, we went to Isaac, his son, and now if we go to Isaac's son, Jacob, in Genesis chapter 27, we get another peek at the next generation that follows. Abraham's grandkids, Jacob and Esau. As their dad, Isaac, is now coming to the end of his life, so Abraham has passed away, Isaac is about to die. It says that one day, when Isaac was old and turning blind, he called for Esau. Esau was the oldest one, and said, "My son." "Yes, father," Esau replied. "I am an old man now," Isaac said, "and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and quiver full of arrows and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you because he's the oldest, the firstborn blessing, my firstborn son, before I die." But Rebekah overheard what Isaac had said to his son Esau. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Because Rebekah is Isaac's wife. Esau is also her son. He's a redhead, right? That's what the Bible describes. And here's one of the things that you're going to see. Esau is not necessarily... Rebekah's not fond of her son Esau. And this is what happens. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob, "Listen, I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare me a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die.' Now, son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out into the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I will use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so that he can eat it and bless you before he dies." You want to talk about dysfunctional families? You'll find them all over the place in the Bible. It is Jacob's mom that tells him, "Hey, your dad's about to die, and he's about to pronounce a blessing on his firstborn. But before he does, we need to get there before he actually blesses Esau." And if you continue to read the story, Jacob says, "But Esau's super hairy. I mean, he's never going to believe that it's me." And she actually fashions hairy arms for him so that he can deceive his almost blind dad. One of the things that you will see in the Bible that we often overlook, once again, there's exemplary faith, but the Bible is full of broken people. And God is using broken people along the way. You're seeing in this patriarch family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that there is dysfunction. There's deception. There's even favoritism. I mean, for me, it doesn't bother me because I'm the favorite one of my moms. I mean, it's fine. But once again, we're seeing that there is dysfunction within the family. And something that we continually see in the Bible that is present in our lives today is something that is referred to as generational curses. And I want to really help you to understand this point because whether you're a parent, whether you've had a bad experience with a parent, whether maybe you're having kids, we often struggle, or if not, we flat out continue to engage in the same things that our parents did. Because that's something that was set up as a hurdle for us to overcome. We're going to be coming back to this next week, so I really don't want to go too deep into it. But one of the things that I shared with an individual a few years back that we were talking about marriage, I'm like, if you look at our marriage, you will often see almost a mirror of what we thought we would never do that we saw that our parents did. When you look at parenting, once again, you become your parents. You will often discipline the way that you understood it, not by what you were being told, but by what you were being exhibited. And it becomes this curse, this baggage that we carry throughout our lives. And unfortunately, because we don't deal with it, we get to the point where as our kids get older, what we do is we take that baggage off and we've given it to them for them to deal with their kids in the same way. Parents, one of the things that I want you to understand, all of us, is that we are shaping the men and women that our children will become. And I want to also clarify this. We do this either in our presence or in our absence. And I'm going to break that down even further. Whether you had a dad or a mom present in your life or an absent mom or dad in your life. In their absence, there's going to be a void that is never filled. In their presence, you will learn how they dealt with things and you're going to do the same things. The way that you deal with life, the things that you prioritize in life will ultimately be the things that our kids do and prioritize in their lives as well. Now, one of the things that the Bible talks about is how generational curses can be broken. So just because, once again, we're going to talk about this quickly, but just because you experience difficulties through your parents doesn't mean that it has to continue. And once again, the sad part is that if we were to really reflect and evaluate, examine ourselves, we would see that if we're parents, most of the times, or at least I would say some of the times, we will find that we're defaulting back to what we experienced, that we said we would never do. So once again, parents, understand that you are shaping your kids not only by what you say, but by what they're seeing you do. This week I was watching this documentary. I love documentaries, I've said that before. I was hearing/watching this documentary, and it really made me think because there was a picture of these two kids that I want for you to check out. It's these two kids that look innocent. And as I saw the pictures, it made me sad because these two kids by the name of Fred and Rose are two innocent-looking kids who, unfortunately, through the course of their life, and without really saying what they endured, I'm just going to say they were abused in a way that ultimately set them up for disaster sexually in the future. And Fred and Rose West end up getting married, these two innocent-looking little kids. And they went on to abuse other individuals who they didn't know and some who they did. It was actually their own kids. And they ended up committing atrocities by murdering them. And we can see these individuals, right? They're just kids. What we experience as kids will ultimately play a factor in how we respond and continue that generational curse. And I want for you to understand that this is the reason that the Bible is so adamant on giving us commands that are helping us to go through life. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. Right? That when we are training our kids, we're training them in such a way that, once again, yes, we're going to screw up. As a parent, I'm broken just as you are. But once again, what are we training our kids in? The method or lack of discipline that you have for your kids is shaping them. They will either be terrified to do something, and they will figure out how to do it in secret because they know what the punishment will be if it's ever found out, because of how harshly they were punished, or if not, they will simply do it because they know that there is no punishment at all. The things that you are leading them to will be the things that they will go back to. That's really what we're seeing, right? Train your kids onto the path that they should go so that when they grow old, they will not depart from it. Now, here's the thing. it is not a guarantee that your kids will remain on that path. And that's a sad part about it. But once again, as a parent, your responsibility is to train them up in that way. Maybe a way to look at it is you could buy your kids and train them how to ride without the wheels, but at the same time, it doesn't prevent them from falling. You're just teaching them how to drive without the training wheels. And I want to be very clear that this is not a message that is trying to tell you or even direct you on how you should parent. Really, the whole point of it is that I want for us to understand and really examine how, as parents, we are shaping our kids. We have Officer Milo in the room, and I appreciate the service that he provides for our community. But one of the things is, and pardon me if this sounds offensive, but it's the truth, the way that you raise your children will ultimately provide either work for the police department, or it will help them to at least have a better job. You're shaping the men and the women that are going to be the next generation. It's either going to be job security for him, which I'm sure that he'd be okay with not so much job security. But once again, you have to understand you're raising the next generation. You're shaping the next generation. Out of every single person, the parents are the most influential, either in their presence or in their absence. I have had kids who ultimately end up going astray, and the most discouraging and maybe even frustrating thing that I've seen is that as soon as the kids start to go astray, guess who the parents want for there to be a fix to? It's a church, right? The church, hey, deal with my kid. Man, if you screwed up your kid to that point, you also need to be part of the solution. We can speak truth into your kids' lives, but ultimately, you're the one that shaped them. And you might not see it because we have blind spots. We all have blind spots. I believe that there are many characteristics from our parents that will shape us in positive ways. As much as I shared some of the negatives, I can tell you that my parents also shaped me to work for what I have. My parents also shaped me in ways that ultimately helped me to see that life is more than just money. Even though there was a pursuit of it, there was also some value outside of it. So I want to be very cautious in not making this about how negative parenting is. Because even along, like I said, among the wreckage, you will find good things. But once again, like I said, whether it's in the absence or the presence, we're shaping our kids. I had an opportunity to talk to an individual who shared how their dad had actually walked out on their family. And, you know, without really going into details, he pretty much was saying, yeah, that was devastating and it wrecked the man that wrecked me as a man. Once again, it's not just in how you are parenting presently, but how you are lack of parenting in your absence. And while our parents play a role, ultimately, one of the things that I also want to clarify is that we still have a choice. Because we often overlook that. At times, we want to hold our parents responsible for our screw-ups. Well, I wouldn't have done this if my parents hadn't. No, that's not what I'm saying. At times, society tries to do this by holding parents responsible for what their kids did. And one of the things that we can see is even in the trial or even in the interviews with Jeffrey Dahmer, a very well-known serial killer, they actually were asking the dad, hey, what'd you do, right? I mean, this doesn't just happen. And his dad talked about ways that, to be honest, if that's really what shapes serial killers, then all of us are serial killers. Because there are things that happen in our daily lives. But one of the things that he did say is he said, there was a season where I walked away from my faith. And then Jeffrey Dahmer says, it was when I found faith that ultimately I realized the things that I was doing that was wrong. And this is not saying that faith will prevent you from doing these things. I'm just simply saying along the way, your parents are shaping, but your parents are not responsible for your actions or mine. And once again, as a culture, we can say, well, if a kid does something, their parents had to do something with it. Once again, generational curses, for sure, no doubt. But Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 20 really pulls back the curtain to help us to see that as much as parents shape you, you still have a choice. And guess what? Your parents will not be held responsible for what you did. This is what it says. The person who sins is the one who will die. The child will not be punished for the parent's sins, and the parent will not be punished for the child's sins. Righteous people will be rewarded for their own righteous behavior, and wicked people will be punished for their own wickedness. One of the things that we've been convinced is because we have been broken to some extent, whether it's by our parents, whether it's by society, whatever it is, we think, well, those are the people to blame. Guess what? At the end of the day, you and I have a choice. I can look back in my life and see how my parents shaped certain things that ultimately did break me. I'm not going to lie, they did. But guess what? It was my choice that ultimately carried that action through. We have to take responsibility for how we're failing. Our parents may set up obstacles for us along the way, but they are not the ones that are making daily choices to continue to live in it. That's you. Even if you make the right choices, here's the thing. It's not a guarantee that your kids will follow in the same path. But you are either, by doing this, you are either setting up obstacles for them to fail, or you are taking down hurdles that will help them just to run straight through. The Bible continually gives us nuggets of wisdom that help us to understand how we can succeed as parents. One verse that I remember my wife actually pointed out to me when we first got married, and when my first daughter was born, it would have been just probably months, but it was Colossians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21, where it says, "Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord," right? So there's that encouragement for children. "Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged." I know that I failed. I know this. Within the Hispanic community, I mean, maybe it's more than just cultural. I believe it's more cultural than anything, but Andrea would probably agree with me, and Anna. But within the Hispanic community, I mean, if you aggravate your kids, that's funny. It's not a negative thing. It's kind of like egg them on. Do it. Come on, just try to see how much you can push it. One of the things that we see is that when you aggravate your children, it does become discouraging after a while. I want to share these two stories as I wrap it up because I want to start by clarifying. I love my parents. My mom and I have a great relationship. My dad and I have had a broken relationship. It's getting better with time, and I pray that God will get a hold of his life and ultimately do an incredible work. But I'm sharing these two stories not because it's something that I hold against my parents, but it's because I want you to see the bigger picture. And once again, I'm not upset with my parents, but one of the things that these two things have done is to help me to see how significant the role of a parent is. When I was a teenager, our youth group, which was pretty small, we at times would go to something called Acquire the Fire. It was a youth conference, and it took place, I want to say it was like Houston. It was about 4 or 5 hours away. And I remember signing up to go to this conference. We get there, it's a great weekend, and I'm excited about what God is doing. I'm on fire, that's a biblical terminology, Christianese, where I'm like ready to go for God, right? I mean, I'm all in. I'm excited. We're coming back home, and my youth pastor, who was also my cousin, knew the relationship that my parents and I had, and he just said, as soon as we got there, it's like, hey, why don't you go and give your mom a hug and say, I'm sorry for what I did. I want to be a better son. I'm like, dude, we're Mexican. That's not going to work, but okay, I'll give it a shot, So I go and, we get off the bus, and I go and give my mom a hug. And I tell her exactly that. And to this day, I still remember what she said. Not verbatim, but it was, you've said that before. Let's see how long this time, let's see how long this lasts this time. it was that moment of discouragement where it's like, why do I even try, right? I mean, it's like, I'm trying, I'm trying my best here. And it was just that moment where the fire went out really quickly. It was a source of discouragement. When I first got married and moved up to Minnesota, which was probably one of the best things that happened for me based on my family dynamics in Texas and my friends. But I moved up here and got married, and we ended up having our firstborn. Like I said, it was in October that we had our firstborn, and then my family came to see my daughter and also to visit. I want to say it was that first time, but they came and visited, and it was my mom, my dad, and my grandparents. It was over Thanksgiving. And like I said, my dad and I didn't have the greatest of relationships growing up. And I remember we're getting together with my in-laws, and they're going to be coming over to our place. It's Thanksgiving Day. This was when Walmart was still open on Thanksgiving. And I remember we had told my parents that if they wanted to take, because we had a little dog, and with a newborn in the house, we didn't want to have it inside. And we asked my parents if they wanted to take it back with them, since, they had a yard where it could run. And my dad's like, oh yeah, that's great. He's all excited about it. And it's Thanksgiving Day. My in-laws are about 10 minutes out from coming and having a Thanksgiving meal. And I remember my dad got into this mode where he gets into these modes at times where you have to do it. It's not like you have to do it later, you have to do it now. And he just, and during this time, let me just say, we all have moments where we have to have a starting point, where everything begins to change, where everything begins to drift. We were once a certain way, and then God begins to get a hold of us, and we start going on a different trajectory. And for me, when I got married, that was that moment, right? When I started to go in a different trajectory. And I'm trying to become a man that loves my family, that loves my wife, that loves God with all his heart, soul, mind, and strength. And once again, we've had bad experience, my dad and I, but during this time, we had just given my dad the dog, my parents the dog. Thanksgiving, 5 to 10 minutes before my in-laws get there, my dad gets it in his mind, you have to go and get one of those little dog kennels, that you could carry so that we could take the dog in the airport. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. After we get done eating, maybe we could go. No, you have to do it now. I'm like, you're kidding, right? I mean, we're just about to sit down. And I'm trying to be as calm as possible. And my dad is insistent. And I'm like, Dad, I honestly don't think they're going to run out of dog kennels at Walmart on Thanksgiving Day. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think you're fine waiting an hour or two. And he was just so insistent. He's getting mad. And I remember I'm just trying to walk, and she was like, just let it go. And my mom's like, what are you doing? It's like, you don't need it right now. And he's like, no, he has to go get it right now. I'm telling him to go get it. He's not listening to me, this and that. I'm a married man. It doesn't matter if you get married in the Mexican culture. When you have a curfew, your parents will tell you when that curfew is, even if you're 45. But, my parents, my mom's like, what are you doing? His in-laws are about to get here, And I'm trying to stay calm. It's almost like this bomb just waiting to explode. My grandma's stepping in, and she's telling her son, my dad, hey, what are you doing? It's okay. We'll go get it afterwards. It's not that big of a deal. He starts freaking out, and I lost it. And I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'll go get it. And I just get upset. I start getting my shoes on. I start getting the keys, and I'm like, Dad, this is ridiculous. It can wait. And Gina's like, just don't do it. Just wait. And I'm like, no, he's not going to let it go. And once I lost it, one of the things that I remember my dad saying, and I will never forget, it's like, ha, I told you, he hasn't changed. That was the most discouraging moment of my life. Because I was trying to do what was right, but a parent is aggravating to the point that they're trying to push you over the edge. Parents, you are shaping the men and women of tomorrow. Rather than pushing to the point that they're going to go over the edge, encourage them. Love them. No matter how many times they've let you down, love them as Christ loved you. Continue to forgive them, encourage them, overlook wrongs. I'm not saying stop parenting. I'm just simply saying understand that you're not only shaping how they will discipline, you're shaping their faith. And once again, I share this not because I'm trying to call out my parents. I know that I've screwed up as a dad, and I'm sure that my kids will have multiple examples as they grow up that they might even share with others. If any of my kids become pastors, I'm pretty sure that they will have no lack of material to speak about parenting. But understand that even in our failures, we're shaping our kids into who they're becoming. It's not that if you screw up, it's too late. It's if you screw up, how are you going to handle that screw up? Because that's how they will respond in their failures as well. So again, I just want to state this. This is not telling you how to parent. This is helping you to understand that you are shaping not only men and women, but you're shaping the men and women that will be in the church and the struggles that they will deal with as they're coming in.